here today sharing a little bit. So when I got started preparing for this message, who is Jesus? Jesus is my identity. I got thinking, like, what even is our identity? What does it mean to me? And who is Jesus? Who is my identity? I thought about it a lot. And last week when Pastor Archie kind of mentioned the actual forms of ID, like passports and driver's license and stuff like that, it got me thinking about a little incident or a little situation in David's life and my husband not too long ago that it just cracks me up, and it fits in well with this message. So it came time for David to have to go renew his license at the DMV. Like, is that not one of the worst things ever? Nobody likes doing that. But nobody likes standing in front of that awkward background and the DMV ladies taking your picture for your license. It's the worst. But so, and then you got to give them your personal information, like your weight and everything. Is just, ugh. This lady, I don't know if it was like her first day or if she was just having an off day or something, but she accidentally entered his weight wrong on his driver's license. And, a couple pounds here, not a big deal if you want to shave off a few pounds. Everybody lies on their license, right? Well, this lady, she shaved off an entire 100 pounds from his license, 100 pounds less than he really weighed. So I thought that was hilarious when he came home and showed me his new license. I was like, wow, babe, that was the fastest weight loss I've ever seen. And shout out to him because he has been getting healthier. He's on a health journey, and he's a lot closer than he was to that fake 100-pound. He's a lot closer today. Yeah, you look good, babe. He's so stylish up in your Aztec-y shirt. He can wear all those fun clothes now. So anyways, I thought that story was funny, and I just think of a cop pulling him over and being like, doing one of these, like, I don't know if that lines up. Like, either you're stretching the truth a little bit, or this is not you on your ID, right? And it got me thinking how we kind of do that in our own lives, don't we? Let me hang on with me. I'll get there with the segue. But we do that in our own lives. Our ID, like this image we're trying to portray to everyone else, maybe doesn't really line up with who we truly are, right? So you get what I did there. But I felt like that story really fit, and just got me really thinking about, where do we put our identity? Where, what image are we trying to put off? Do we feel the need to look better or make ourselves look a certain way or dress a certain way or act a certain way to try and impress people or prove ourselves to the world? We struggle with that. And, we really have to ask ourselves, who am I really? So I thought it was fitting to look up the definition of identity. So let me read it to you. One definition. Who you are, the way you think about yourself, the way you're viewed by the world, and the characteristics that define you. So there's that definition. And then I found this other one really interesting. It says, who a person is, or the qualities of a person that make him or her different from others. Different. Not the same. Not trying to blend in with everyone else, not trying to fit in with all these different groups or be like him or be like her, but what makes us different? So why do we spend so much time and waste so much energy trying to be like other people or trying to fit in? We end up so confused about our real identity, we forget the very parts that make us different and unique and make us us, the way God created us. So I really believe that a lot of us are experiencing what I call an identity crisis. And one thing that I think is the main culprit of identity crisis, at least in my life and in my opinion, is comparison. Comparison is the root. It's like keeping up with the Joneses, that phrase. Like, keeping up with the Joneses used to be a heck of a lot easier back in the olden days, if I could say that. You used to be just comparing with your neighbors, like the people on your street, like as far as you could see, not the whole world being able to compare to. Now it's 7 billion people's Instagrams and social media accounts that we have to compare ourselves to. Before, it's like, if you got a new car, well, you're doing better than Sally and George down the street. Like, you're winning. If you get a boat, somebody doesn't have a boat down your street, like, you got this in the bag. They got to keep up with you now. But nowadays, with social media, the way things have become, we have a lot more to compare our own lives to, don't we? And we sit there and we scroll all day and we think, why don't I have what they have? Why don't I look like her? Why can't I dress like her? Why can't we afford that vacation? Why do my kids act like that and her kids act like angels? She's always bragging about their grades and bragging about blah, blah, blah. I am bad about posting pictures about my kids, but they're cute. But anyways, we compare our lives so much to our day-to-day to everyone else's highlight reels, That's what we do, and comparison, it's always been around, even before social media, but it's especially amped up today, the comparison. But when I got to thinking about comparison, it really truly is the thief of joy, and how much time in my own personal life and how much energy I have wasted comparing myself to others. So there's a lot of things in life that I don't really feel too qualified to speak on. Like I'm got a lot of life, a lot of things to learn, and a lot more things to go through. But if there's one thing that I have gone through and learned a lot of and experienced, it would be struggling with my identity and who I am. Struggling with, my self-worth and insecurity and doubts in myself. And for a long time, I battled with those things. You may see me up here on Sundays singing. I may look confident, but it's taken me a long time to even look like that, let alone feel any of that. And so I've struggled for a long time with those things in my life. So I feel somewhat qualified to get up here and talk about it today. But at the same time, when they asked me to share and speak, when they asked me a couple weeks ago, my instant reaction is like run in the other direction, like, nope. Not today, you've got the wrong girl, I'm not qualified. Who am I to get up here and speak? Like, I can't do this. But, I really had to quiet those voices and those lies, because nowadays I know that those voices are coming not from God, not from the one who created me and he's equipping me. Those lies and those voices I'm hearing that I can't do this, that's not from God, that's from the enemy. But the thing is, I didn't always know how to tell the difference between the lies and the truth. It's taken a long time for me to be able to discern the two. So a big part of my journey of finding my identity in Jesus was learning to listen to what he says about me and not those other voices. So today I kind of just want to share a little bit about my journey, what I've gone through to get me to, not that I've arrived, but to get me a lot closer to knowing what Jesus says about me, who I am in him, and who I belong to. So I'm super excited to share, and I'm just honored that I get to share a little bit about my journey. But before we get really into it, let me just pray over us and over this service. So if you want to bow your heads with me. God, I thank you so much for this day. I thank you for just this honor and this opportunity, and I pray that my words would be yours, God, and you would just speak through me and just make this clear and come across exactly how it needs to come across, and let it fall on ears that need to hear. And God, I pray that our ears and our eyes would be open this morning and our hearts open to receive what you have for us, Jesus. And we thank you. We praise you. In your name I pray. Amen. All right. So, they asked me to share my journey. I'm like, where do I begin? Like, this is, life's long. Where do we even start? Like, how do I begin this? So I thought I would just kind of start at the beginning and where I believe that kind of the root of my struggles and stuff might have started. But let me start from the beginning. I had a great childhood. I had the best parents ever. Never take them for granted. They're incredible. Skip and Susie, they're just the cutest. Anybody who knows them, I mean, come on. My parents, anybody who knows Skip and Susie, you love them, and they also do not age. Let me point that out. They just keep getting younger. They do. They're great. And so amazing parents, amazing family. Lots of them are with me today. I always had encouragement and support, and I always felt loved. I had a great childhood, and I'm thankful for that. So, nothing real traumatic in the childhood years, like no big come to Jesus moment or anything like a lot of testimonies do. But, as early on as I can remember, a big part of me, I always wanted to be a famous singer. I wanted to be the next Mariah Carey. Like, that was going to be my thing. Watch out, I'm coming for your job, Mariah, or Britney Spears, whoever it was. I had a lot of idols. So I would karaoke my heart out. Like, I'm sure my parents just put in their earbuds and let me just sing in my bedroom. And I karaoke'd a lot, and I wrote in my little fuzzy pink journals, like, wrote some songs. They were terrible, but I wrote songs. And I wanted those big things. I wanted the lights and the stage, and I wanted to be the next big thing. Like, it was just, I thought it was my destiny. So part of me, that was I put some identity in that. Like, I'm confident in this. I want to be a singer. And then there was another part of me, the more realistic, real world side. Like, this is probably not going to happen. But this side of me was a little more shy, not very confident. Didn't really know, I was just a little quiet and kind of always felt inferior. Like, going through grade school and things, I just felt inferior to other people, always comparing myself. So, that's completely contradictory of wanting to be a pop star, right? You kind of got to be confident to be a pop star. Well, and one of my first memories, I got to thinking too, that kind of set off this not as good as, or this inferior mentality. I remember being in a friend's house. Like, you go over to your friend's house to play. I was probably 7 or 8 or something, and we're in her bedroom, and we are trying on her clothes, probably putting on a fashion show or something. I don't know. Why do 7, 8-year-olds do that kind of thing? I don't know, but I'm sure her parents were thrilled to see a fashion show. But we were trying on her clothes and kind of doing one of those, like, comparing, like, sizing ourselves up in the mirror and making sure we look skinny, that our clothes make us look skinny. Like, even at a young age, I remember doing that. And something that always stuck with me that friend said to me was, you're not as skinny as me, but you're kind of skinny. And that just stuck with me for a long time, that kinda. It's crazy how just sometimes the littlest of things that people can put in our minds, those little things that you hear can just stick with you, and they're hard to shake. So I always had that view of myself, that I wasn't skinny enough or pretty enough or as good as my friends or whatever it may be. And then kind of around that same time, I know my mom blames herself for this, but it's not you, Mom. It was my mom, around the time that my sister was about to get married. They was going on Weight Watchers. She was really tracking her calories and her points, and really into that. So I thought, I'm gonna jump on this. Like, I'm gonna start counting calories. I thought it was fun. So I write in a little notebook, like, my calories, and I got kind of in that mentality from a very young age, like, really aware of food and calories in my body. And I remember being in the lunchroom at school, and it was just my thing. Like, I prided myself on it. People would ask me, like, we'd be sitting at the table. They'd be like, how many calories are in this bag of Doritos? I'd be like, 160. Next question. Boom. Like, I knew everything. It was ridiculous. Fruit roll-ups or oatmeal cream pies or the chocolate milk in little cartons, like, I knew the calories of it. I don't know why, but I did, and I thought it was cool. But so I always had this, I was very aware of my body and food and calories from a very young age. Then school kept going on. Junior high, when I got to junior high, I kind of had a really bad bout of anxiety and just struggling with who I was, and I always wanted to be home. I was very homesick, and I didn't want to be in school. It was just this weird period of anxiety for me. The comparison and stuff too, like, why is everybody else having fun and enjoying life, and here I am struggling? So this was just another circumstance where the comparing. And then high school, I got better. School got better, but I still dealt with all the insecurities, the confidence issues, kind of that comes along with high school. Like, especially high school girls, they're really good at tearing each other down, really good at making each other feel like they're not good enough. So dealt with all that normal stuff in high school. I was always kind of like easily intimidated and shy and everything in high school. But I my favorite place to be was here. I grew up here, and I led worship and helped over there. I was really involved with youth. It was 180 back then. Whoop, whoop. Shout out to 180 OGs in the house. I love leading worship over here, but I still had this, like, I want to be a singer, though. I want to do big things I want to be the famous singer, I just thought. And then I kept going on, time went on, and I really wanted to try out for American Idol. Like, everybody's like, you should try out for American Idol. Like, maybe that's your big break. So when I got old enough and I was able to, I dragged my parents. We went, well, they drove me. They technically drove me. But we went, I tried out for American Idol. Disclaimer, it's nothing like the show at all. Let me just say that. It's all, smoke and mirrors or whatever. It's nothing like it. And I'm not bitter about it at all. You can't tell, but I'm not bitter about it at all. But I did not get the golden ticket. You can imagine my disappointment and my devastation when I did not get that yes. This was not my big break. I remember the judges, which was not Simon Cowell or any of them, wasn't the main people. It's like there's lots of levels to get to them, but they don't tell you that on the TV show. So anyways, but the judges had told me, you've got a good voice, you've got potential, but your confidence needs work. So I was beginning to see a pattern here in my life, like, man, I'm insecure and not confident and don't know who I am. So there was that whole American Idol experience. Then after high school, since I wasn't the pop star that I thought I would be by then, I was like, what's next? Like, what do I do with my life? I had no direction, really. I had a lot of things I liked to do, a lot of things that I was into. I liked to read, and I liked to write and sing, and I thought I wanted to do all these different things, but I was like, I'll just go to community college and try and figure this out. So I went to community college. I guess I ought to mention that David was a pretty important part of my life. He's kind of like, my high school sweetheart. We'd been dating for a while, so he's a small detail in my life, We had been dating since I was a freshman. He was a senior. He was desperate for a prom date, and he thought I was cute, I guess, so he called me up on the home phone. Like, let me just say, I need to add that in there because cell phones existed, like texting existed, but he's so old-fashioned and such a gentleman that he looked up my parents' home phone in the phone book and called me. So then the rest is history. I remember we talked for a long time that night. I had to throw that in there, sorry. I like to tease you about that. So anyway, David, I'm so thankful that he was always by my side through all of the years because we always kind of joke around like we don't know what we would have done without each other. We probably would have gotten in trouble, like we would have been lost and we kept each other grounded. So David, at this point, when I had graduated high school, he was finishing up at the U of I. He was working a lot. A lot of my friends were away at university, so here I was at community college. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I need to get some direction. I don't know what I want to do. And I kind of, I had some part-time jobs. I tried to find fulfillment in those, but nothing really felt right. So I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted bigger, and I wanted better, and I wanted more. But I needed something. I needed a hobby or something to just kind of immerse myself in and feel some sort of purpose. So I got really into working out and running and watching what I was eating even more. And at the beginning, it was just, I thought I was being disciplined. Like I started just really being very, very mindful and tracking everything, running a lot. It wasn't too extreme at this point, but I was starting to feel a little bit better about myself and like, okay, this is the direction I want to go. Then, happy time, we got engaged. I got the ring, locked it down. He was mine forever. And it was even more for me like a reason to keep working and getting in shape. I wanted to be in the best shape for my wedding, So I really took it up a notch and got very obsessed with exercise and eating healthy, when in all reality, it was starting to become quite unhealthy. I started developing like these weird obsessive habits, like I was finding myself eating the same things every day, only letting myself eat half of things, like half a granola bar, half a banana, like just strange things like that. I started bringing, anytime we'd go to a restaurant, I was like bringing my own fat-free dressings and stuff, and things were just becoming not so fun anymore. And anything I ate that I felt a little bit guilty about, I would have to run it off. I would have to go off and burn those calories. Like, I couldn't deal with that I had just eaten something that made me feel guilty. Just very obsessive habits were beginning to develop. And got to the wedding day, big day. I remember, like, I didn't want to eat anything all day because I didn't want to feel bloated. I had this fear of just feeling fat. I didn't eat anything all day, my wedding, and then I didn't even enjoy the wedding reception dinner that you work so hard to plan and every detail so perfect, the menu, and I didn't even enjoy it because it wasn't one of my safe foods. So really this mindset and this just this obsession with health really started to take over and was essentially ruining all the things in my life that were supposed to be like the biggest, the happiest days. I couldn't even enjoy those days. So I remember going on our honeymoon. Didn't really enjoy that because all I could think about was, this isn't my normal food, and it makes me uncomfortable, and all I thought about was food and like trying to sneak off to exercise. It was very unhealthy mindset. And then when we got home from our honeymoon, the reality of like newlywed life and everything changed. This all hit me as soon as we get home from the honeymoon. I was like, I don't live with my parents anymore. I'm only 19. Like, I'm still a baby. And now I committed myself to this big goofball, and we're in this apartment together. And I started a new job, and I was going to school, and I was about to start beauty school because I thought that was going to be like maybe my passion or something. And everything was different. Everything felt out of control for me at that point. I felt like I couldn't control anything that was happening in my life, and everything was just spinning. But the one thing that I could control was my food and my exercise. So I held on to that. I held on for dear life. And that part of me, it became my identity in my head. So I was so trapped in my head, obsessing about health, that I was literally becoming a zombie. Like, I was becoming a shell of a person, basically. David was like, who did I marry? What have I done? Like, this is not the girl I fell in love with. I was very distant and detached and just getting farther and farther. I was pretty unreachable and was not the same girl that he married. And at this point, Mom and Dad and David were so worried. People were asking if I was okay. Had people asking my family, like, is everything all right? Is she sick? What's going on? I remember running into a teacher from high school at Target, and she said something about, like, I looked like I was sick, like something must be really wrong, like, does she have cancer, is what she said, because my cheeks were so sunken in, and my clothes were falling off of me, and I didn't look like me anymore. So yeah, I got a lot of comments on how skinny I had gotten, but the sick thing is, and the sad thing is, that I began to crave those comments. Like, it was validation for me. It was like, finally, like, I'm getting some approval, or like what I'm doing is, it's worth it, and people are seeing all this hard work, and just a very sick mindset that I had. So, like, my day-to-day for months in school and beauty school was, I'd get up, I'd run 3, 4, 5 miles on an empty stomach, go to school. I lived on salads and diet Pepsi and sugar-free mints and gum. And I counted those calories. Every single calorie that went in my mouth, I counted and obsessed over. I weighed myself constantly. It was just a vicious cycle. I had moments, I remember having moments that I just wish I could go back to normal. I wish I could be normal. I mean, why is everyone else enjoying life and so carefree and not thinking about what they're eating? And here I am just trapped in my head and struggling. It continued, kept getting a little bit worse as time goes on. And I remember my legs I was freezing all the time. So especially my legs, like the circulation in my legs. So I would always wear leggings, like fleece-lined leggings under my skinny jeans to keep warm. I remember one instance that I was in class and I had to get up in front of the class to like write something on the board or something. And I stood up and my legs gave out under me, collapsed because I was so weak and malnourished essentially. And so things like that, just my hair was starting to fall out. My skin was dry. I couldn't sleep at night. I was experiencing sleep paralysis. And if anybody has ever experienced sleep paralysis or know what it is, it's one of the scariest things. It's basically you're asleep. You're in this stage of sleep that you're like half asleep and half awake, but you are basically trapped in this dream. You can't wake yourself up. You can't scream. You can't run. And so in these dreams, it was always something scary. There was always some sort of like dark, evil spirit in the room with me, some sort of dark creature just like closing in on me in these dreams. And it felt so real, and it felt like I couldn't escape from it. I couldn't wake myself up out of these. And this would happen pretty often. And that was just, as I look back, it was like a metaphor for the way my life was going. I was literally living in my own prison. It was, this darkness was over me in real life and in these dreams I was having. And so I was in this vicious cycle of restricting and what I thought was like a binge. If I eat one thing that made me feel guilty, I instantly had to run it off. So it was a cycle. Started having kind of like, I'd call them interventions with family. They were so concerned about me. I remember them just like, what can we do? We've got to do something. She is getting worse. This is not healthy. But they couldn't convince me. I didn't see it. I was like, guys, I'm fine. Like, I'm just being disciplined. Nothing is wrong with me. But I finally got to a point where I let them convince me to go. We went to the doctor and a counselor. I was reluctant about it, but they got me there, and the doctors told me, they diagnosed me with anorexia and anxiety and like obsessive compulsive behaviors. But I still didn't really believe it. It's like, I'm fine. This is just who I am. I'm just being disciplined, But the doctors also told me something that really got me thinking that maybe something is wrong. The doctors told me that if I didn't turn this around and gain that healthy weight back and change my life, that I was going to have a really hard time ever having a baby if that was something we wanted. My body wasn't healthy enough to carry a baby. So that got me like, okay, maybe this is a little more serious than I thought. I'm literally putting my future family on the line, all for this eating disorder. But just like any addiction, which essentially I was addicted to this eating disorder and this life, this mindset, like any addiction, it's not just as easy as stopping the behavior. You can't just quit. It wasn't like I could just eat a cheeseburger and eat more. It's fine. That's not how it worked. So I got to the point where I was just tired of living like this. I finally got to the point where all the years of the self-doubt and the insecurities, feeling less than, even from those younger years and on, it all kind of was coming to a head at this point, and I was out of control once again. I didn't even know how I had gotten there. I had no idea how I had gotten to this point, and I didn't even recognize who I was seeing in the mirror. I didn't like who I was becoming, and it was kind of at that point that I realized who I was becoming was not lining up with who I wanted to be, and it was not lining up with the things that God says about me and about my life and the plans He has for my life. So in your life and all of our lives, it's those kind of times where we have to be strong enough to say, no, this isn't my identity. I don't want this to be my identity. I am not my eating disorder. That's not me. I'm not my addictions. That's not me. I'm not my anxiety. I don't agree with that. I'm not my depression. I'm not just my past mistakes. That's not me. That's not my identity. I'm done letting this dictate how I feel about myself, and I'm done letting this situation dictate my identity. So, over these times, my mom and dad kept speaking over me. I'm more than a conqueror. Kept saying to me, you are more than a conqueror in Jesus. And I'm sure that I rolled my eyes about it then and didn't really believe them, but at the same time, a big part of me wanted that. I wanted to conquer this. I wanted to be done with this. I didn't want this for my life. So I began that journey of recovery. the long journey of recovery. Went back to the doctor for weight checks and kept seeing the counselor, but I didn't really know how to approach it the healthy way. I was just, in my head, it was just like, okay, I have to eat more and run less. So I wasn't sure how to approach this, but I started adding my fear foods back into what I was eating, things like peanut butter and protein bars and anything with fat and calories that I had for so long had restricted myself from. So I started adding those things back into what I was eating, and it was at that point, my body was like, thank you. I've been waiting for, I'm starving. Thank you for finally feeding me. And this turned into I can't stop eating. I felt like I had no control over the food. Once the food had control over me and I was so fearful of this food and was restricting, now I'm on the other end of the spectrum and this food is controlling me. I'm like, how did I get here? How was I so disciplined once and now I can't stop eating? I struggled with binge eating, and if you've ever struggled in that way before, then I'm sure you can relate a little bit. But so that was the shame and the guilt in that, and as soon as I started this recovery process and eating more, I was gaining the weight back pretty quickly. To everyone else, it just looked like I was getting more back to myself, you're looking more like Emily. But to me, I still had that eating disorder mindset. I was I couldn't accept my new body. I hated getting rid of my skinny jeans. I hated it. I hated people saying things to me oh, you're looking really healthy. I hated that, because to me that was I'm getting fat. I couldn't understand, this is just still such a stronghold for me. My mind was still in the eating disorder mindset, even though my body didn't look like it anymore. So then there's a whole nother identity crisis going on. I'm just at this point, I'm just begging God, please take this from me. I just want to live my life. I just want to go back to normal, whatever normal is. I was feeling broken and even more insecure than ever before. And now, instead of comparing myself to other girls and everybody else's bodies and skinny, I was comparing my post-eating disorder to my eating disorder body. I wanted that back. But then, after dealing with, the aftermath and the health problems of recovering from this eating disorder, my hormones were very out of whack. Still, doctors were telling me you're going to probably have to get on some medicine, kind of do some little treatments to get your body where you could even carry a baby, be healthy enough to carry a baby. And at that point, we were kind of thinking about starting a family, and I just had to give that to God. I had to say, okay, God, if you're going to do this, I give you control, and I'm going to give this to you. But I was still so what? God, just take this from me. And I was still struggling with this mindset. And I just wanted to go back to the old me. That's all I wanted at that point. How have I gotten here? I just want to go back to the old me. But that was the point where God said to me, I heard him say, no, I don't want you to go back to the old you, because I want to do something new in you. And I want to set you free. And I want to do something new in you and renew your mind in this area. And he said, I'm going to give you something to take your focus off of yourself. I'm going to give you something better than you could ever imagine. And I want to set you free from this mindset and give you a new purpose and a new identity. And that's not long after that is when I found out that I was pregnant with our first baby. And it was like a miracle. I never thought it was going to happen after what I had done to my body. So when we found out we were pregnant, it was like, okay, this process, this healing is finally going to start for me. And that is where a huge part of my recovery came from, was through pregnancy, which is kind of ironic because usually, I thought maybe I'm going to gain weight and your body changes. I thought, this is going to be really hard for me with this mindset. But in now reality, it turned out to be the very thing that it was my healing process. And I learned how to love my body for what it could do. Like, I'm literally growing life inside me. So I learned to love my body for what it could do, not for what it looked like, what I thought it had to look like, and what size jeans I thought I had to wear, or whatever those thoughts were. I found balance, and I really did find more freedom than I ever had before. So I went from being told that you may never have kids to God using these kids. Now we have two. God using these kids to be the very thing that healed me and that gave me a new outlook on life and a new perspective and a new purpose. So yeah, now with two babies, they're toddlers now. It's crazy where I was and to look where I am now. And not that I've arrived, or not that I don't ever have those eating disorder thoughts creep in, those enemy lies creep in. But the difference now is that I don't let my jean size or the weight on the scale that I see dictate how I feel about myself anymore. And I don't feel, like a slave to the scale. And I barely even weigh myself anymore because that scale is stupid anyways. Just if you don't get anything out of this message, just your scale's stupid. Don't even use it. So I give myself grace now. I started to really realize that all of those years of struggle had a common theme. It was that I was searching for identity everywhere except for the true source. And, I learned through this whole process that it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter my weight or how skinny I was. I still wasn't happy when I looked in the mirror because I wasn't putting my identity in Jesus, the one who created me. And, I wonder a lot if I had never gone through that, if I had always known my worth in Jesus' eyes, if I've always looked at myself the way Jesus looks at me, would I have gone through that? Would I have struggled with that eating disorder? But then I get to thinking, well, the Bible says, in our weakness, God is made strong. And in our weakness, his power, can be seen. And that was validation for me that we go through these things so that his strength and his glory can be seen. We can glorify him through the hard times and the things that he brings us through. So I learned that his grace and his strength alone could sustain me when nothing else could. We grow and we build character and we learn. And through that, I believe I became a better mom now because I'm able to I know the things to say and help my kids learn later on. Balance and loving yourself and knowing how to love yourself the way Jesus loves you and look at yourself the way Jesus looks at you. And now I try my darndest to, when I look in the mirror, to imagine seeing myself how God sees me, even when it's hard to. So yeah, next point I want to make is just, we can't find confidence in ourselves. We cannot find confidence in our own selves or in our appearance, in our weight, in our job title, in our accomplishments, in worldly things. If we search for validation in worldly things, we're never going to feel enough. We're going to always feel like we don't make the cut. If we don't root our identity in Jesus, we won't withstand when those storms come at us and hit us. In Matthew 7:24, I'm going to get biblical on you for a second because they wanted me to preach. Matthew 24 says, the rain poured, the floods came, the winds blew, but the house didn't fall, for it was built on the rock. If we would just build our lives and our identity on the rock, on Jesus, how much better are we going to be off? Our confidence won't be shaken if our identity is rooted in Jesus, and then we can live in confidence in him. So a couple questions I want you to ask yourself today is to really begin to be able to see yourself through Jesus' eyes. Ask yourself a couple questions. Whose voice am I listening to the most? Whose voice is the loudest in your life? Is it the world's or is it God's truth? Are you listening to the enemy's lies? Or are you listening to what God says about you? Next, ask yourself, whose lead am I really following? Am I following the world's lead and what it feels like the world is telling me to be and do and look like? Or am I following God's lead? Because, even in those tough seasons, like walking through an eating disorder or walking through addiction or whatever you're walking in, it's like we may not know where God's trying to take us, but when we're being led by him, he's always going to take us, and we're always going to end up exactly where he needs us to be and where he wants us to be if we're being led by him. And then we have to ask ourselves, what is my real idea of winning? Like, what is my idea of victory in this world? Like, am I so caught up in trying to win the things of the world and win people's approval and impressing everyone by my job or my appearance or the amount of followers on Instagram? We gotta stop trying to impress the world and know what he says about us and know where our true identity comes from. So that was a lot, but it's a huge part of my story and how I started to find my identity in Jesus. And of course, I'd like to say now that I can stand up in front of you and be like, yeah, I'm completely free from all insecurities, and I never compare myself, or I never doubt myself, or I always feel great. But that's just not the truth. It's a process. We all struggle, and it's always a process to this freedom, but man, I'm a lot closer than I was ever before because God brought me through that. And I have found freedom in putting my identity in Jesus. But, now since becoming a mom, it's like a whole nother set of comparison and, the mom guilt. And I'm like, you feel like you have to cut your kids' sandwiches in the shape of a unicorn, like gluten-free bread, or else you're not a good mom. Like, you get all these ideas of how you're supposed to be as a mom now, or, and whatever your situation is, that comparison. But for me now, it's easy to slip into that mindset too, that like, I'm just a mom, like I'm just a stay-at-home mom. But really, I'm learning just how important this season in my life really is, and the work that, God's calling me to do right now as a mom, like how important it really is. And just like in your life, if you aren't putting your identity in the right things, it's going to be easy for the world to tell you that whatever you're doing is small or insignificant or doesn't make a difference, or your story doesn't matter, your voice is too quiet. Whatever it is, like, we have to know that, you're not just a mom, or you're not just a teacher, you're not just a factory worker. That's not your identity. You're not just what you do for a living. Just like you aren't your past, or you aren't your addictions, or not just an eating disorder. Whatever it is, this season has a purpose, and God's going to use you and your story for his glory if you let him. And, we're going to go through seasons that seem like they're never going to end, like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but we got to remember that our identity isn't dictated by our past or our current situation. Because when God gave you that new ID, he said you don't have to go back to the old you. You never have to go back there, because I want to do something new in you. And, the old me is insecure. The old me was easily intimidated. The old me didn't really know who I was. I didn't know who God says about me. But as soon as I started really leaning in and speaking those truths over my life, and beginning to really understand how much God loves me and how he sees me as his masterpiece, and that I was made in his image, it started to change things for me. And I feel like if we really understood that we were made in his image, would we really tear ourselves apart so much? Because if we really understood that we were made in his image, if we're insulting his creation, aren't we really insulting the creator who made the creation? Like, think about that. And I think also I almost brought up, like, I thought it was going to be too much for my very first day up here. I already don't know what to do with my hands, so like a demonstration was going to be a little hard for me. But I thought about putting 2 mirrors up here and having a mirror for the world and how the world sees you and how the world makes you look at yourself, and then another mirror about how God sees you. and how God wants to see you and the things God says about you, and writing all the things. But like I said, that was just going to be a lot for me to work with. Try to keep it simple. But so we just have to, just like with, this is really cheesy, but you got to take your metaphorical Windex, okay? Just pretend Windex truth. And you got to shine that bad boy up. You got to shine up that mirror that God looks at you through. Look at the mirror like God sees you. And you got to make that so clear that you know exactly who you are and who your identity is in Jesus. So how do we begin to really look through God's eyes? How do we even do that? I think one of the most powerful things we can do is actually speak these affirmations over ourselves. I'm going to read a couple of these, and I hope that you just find some peace and some clarity in who God says you really are. So let me read a few of these affirmations. I am a child of God. I am a branch of the true vine. I am redeemed. I'm no longer a slave. I'm free in Jesus. I'm the righteousness of Christ. My body is a temple. I'm made in his image. I'm the head and not the tail. His grace is sufficient for me. I am more than a conqueror in Christ. I'm his masterpiece. I'm chosen. I'm set apart. He works all things together for my good. We repeat them over and over until these truths become louder than the lies of the world. So I knew I was going to go over on time again a little bit, but it's okay. You guys are second service. Like, I don't have another service to be, but it's fine. So today, if just a couple more minutes here, if you find yourself in some sort of identity crisis today, something that's holding you from the past or, keeping you from walking in freedom now, you have to know what Jesus says about you and how he sees you. You have to know who you are in him and who you belong to. So let's pray.